I'm going to bring out the panel and allow them to introduce themselves. We have 5 panelists, and looking forward to this. Guys, why don't you come on out? Take a seat right here. They are ready, and looking forward to hearing what you share with us. Let's give the panel a hand, everybody.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to be talking about decentralization and the metaverse. How many of you have heard of the open metaverse? Okay, we've got a few out there. So we've got a great set of people here. Why don't we do some intros? James, do you want to get us kicked off?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm James Haft. I'm the chairman of DLTX. We're the only publicly traded company that does business exclusively with protocols and algorithms. We build decentralized networks that are the backbone and infrastructure that allow decentralized transactions.
How's it going, guys? My name is Matt Mendez. I'm an NFT analyst at QuantStamp, and I run their NFT fund.
Hey everybody, I'm Alex Yates. I'm the co-founder of Letty. We are metaverse real estate developers, and before that I was at Harmony and Draper University, and I mined Bitcoin back in 2016.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Dele Atanda. I run 3 organizations, 2 most relevant for today. One is the Internet Foundation, an NGO which is dedicated to digital human rights and to the ethical use of data in commerce. And then I run a company called MetaMedia, which is a crypto media company. We minted the first comic on the blockchain, Meta Knights. And our mission is basically to transform ownership through storytelling and play.
Awesome. And my name is Jorden Woods, and I've been in decentralization and the metaverse for a couple decades, actually. It's been quite a journey. And published a book on Web3 in 2019. It's actually called Enterprise Blockchain Has Arrived, but if you read it, it's all about Web3. I started a venture studio in Silicon Valley in 2018. It's called StarChain Ventures, and we do a lot of interesting projects, spin-up companies, different experiments. Last year and a half, it's all been about NFTs and the metaverse. So excited to be here, and we're going to talk about if the future is going to be centralized or decentralized. So with that, let's take it to the panel. And so, you know, is this metaverse going to be controlled by one of the big tech majors, one of the FANG companies, or are we going to be in control through the Web3 ethos? Dele, what do you think?
You know, it's a more complex question by the day. If you asked me this question a month ago, I would have said, depends, and hopefully we the people will take ownership of it. But I think the question is actually a lot more nuanced than it appears on the surface. And I think, you know, I feel there are 2 things we have to be really careful about in the world today. One is fundamentalism and the other is tribalism. And I feel like as a community, we become a bit fundamental about decentralization and tribal in our fundamentalism about it, which I think is a dangerous place to be. And I think the reality is that we need a combination of centralization in certain areas and decentralization in others. And quite frankly, right now, where we are with the metaverse, I think, and where the technology is, I think the question that's more important is, will we have a safe metaverse? Will we have a metaverse that we, the people, control, or will it be controlled by corporate interests? I don't think, because if you ask if it's centralized or decentralized, you have to really get clear on what level you're talking about. You're talking about governance or infrastructure. I think infrastructure probably will be centralized in the short term because decentralized infrastructure doesn't give the performance, and we see that with the metaverse iterations that are out today. So anyway, I'll put it there for the moment.
Okay, well, that was a lot to unpack. I guess, Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'll say two quick things. First thing is, I think it's, defining decentralization is not, as simple as, the actual context behind what is decentralized or what is centralized is not like black and white, so it exists on a spectrum. And so, what is decentralization? Is it, do you have a snapshot page? Do you, do you have Discord community calls? Like, what does that even mean? And so I feel like we still don't even know what that means yet. And a lot of companies who call themselves decentralized are not decentralized. And so we're gonna have to, time will tell what that looks like. And the second thing is, running a decentralized team is a lot more inefficient than running a centralized team. I've worked with both, and decentralized teams work, 10 times or more slower. So I think in the beginning, I think there is value in starting with centralized and then eventually moving to becoming decentralized.
I think a really interesting thing to think about is we've never really had, the metaverse is like a brand new object, a new entity that people are starting to talk about. So I think it would be better, and it almost makes sense, like Dele was saying, that it will start centralized, but I think over time, eventually, people will be able to pick it apart and make it decentralized. I think the same way how almost all new technology, it starts centralized, and then over time, eventually, it becomes with the people. The same thing with the internet, for example. It started out very one-dimensional, and then over time, the people controlled it, and now we're here. So I think it will be a little bit of both, but towards the end, eventually, it should be decentralized.
I agree with Matt in that everything starts centralized because it starts inside one person's brain, and it's not decentralized until that person shares it with another person, and another person shares it, and then you go through that geometric growth, and you go towards decentralization, which is a continuum. It's not a thing. You're not centralized or decentralized. You live on a continuum of decentralization, I think. I think that we're going to have both. I think the answer to your question was actually yes, and because I think that you'll have the existing system, which is going to want to stay in control and maintain its power, and the people that are profiting from it are going to keep profiting from it. At the same time, we now have tools where we can free ourselves from that system and start to behave outside of that system and form our own relationships. And I think that centralization and decentralization is going to be a choice, not one that's necessarily promoted by the centralized entities that we live within now, but you actually now have a choice to start to do transactions that other people are telling you you can't do that transaction, or have relationships with people where you're told you can't talk to that person, or go to travel and be with people, whether it's virtually or in the real world. So I think what we're going to have is the coercive centralized system, and you'll have the volunteerist decentralized system, and you'll start to have a choice for moving between the two.
So sounds like there is a spectrum. Yeah, my thoughts are kind of the same, but also different. So from my experience, and if we look out at what we've got today, I would say it's mostly centralized. Most of Web3, and you've probably heard this at the conference, is more like Web 2.5, right? It's not true, fully decentralized, everything controlled by a DAO, no leadership and no censorship. We don't really have that. So if you look at most of the metaverses out there that are being spun up, and I think this is an important point, and some of you talked about this term, the metaverse, it's kind of a misnomer. There's really not one, right? You've got metaverses. It's easier to say, hey, the metaverse, let's go hang out. People talk about Snow Crash, Ready Player One, and that gives you the sense there's one. But if you really look out there, there's a lot of them. Even though there's a lot of them, though, they're mostly centralized. So, is there going to be places where there are, people can have different experiences and there are different choices? Yes. Is it going to be mostly decentralized? I hope so, but from what I've seen, it's looking pretty centralized, even though you do have choice. So anyway, my hope is that it becomes more decentralized, but I haven't seen it. So, okay, so we've had this discussion about centralized and decentralized. I think for the average person, does the average person really care? I think they don't really care, right? They care about what choice they have. and what is the experience like? So what would we get in a decentralized metaverse, and what would we get in a centralized metaverse? Dele, you kind of got into this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not that the average person doesn't care, but I think this is part of the education. We need to understand what to care about and what not to care about. So I don't think that the actual metaverse as an infrastructure, it's so important that whether it's centralized or decentralized right now. What's more important is actually the user experience in that regards. That said, I do believe that the assets that are at play in terms of users' data, users' identity, users' NFTs, users' inventory, all of that should be decentralized. And that's, I think, the big movement. That's where the revolution really is right now. I think that's where the demarcation is between this industry and the more traditional centralized tech industry in that regards. So I think we get lost in the argument about whether the environment is centralized or decentralized, because you have to have practical solutions to performance issues and problems and experiences that you can deliver in that manner. That's why I think it's important that we govern those environments in the right way. But in terms of real ownership, I think the most critical thing is that the assets within the metaverse need to be owned by us, the asset owners, the IP creators, the data generators. And I think that's what the decentralized metaverse of today looks like versus ones by the centralized entities where they own everything. And we basically work for them and create content for them, and they exploit us indefinitely through it.
Other thoughts?
I think a really good parallel to understand this is when you look at what are the metaverses that we have now, right? For me, it's Discord and Twitter. The definition of a metaverse is like a replacement for reality. So if you spend more time in a certain location other than real life, that's essentially a metaverse. So I think, for example, Twitter is fully centralized, but it comes down to the choice. That's what people really care about. Do they have the ability to say what they want? Do they have the ability to feel like their accounts are truly theirs and they can say whatever they want? Especially, I feel like Twitter is like a very tiny metaverse in that it's only just information is portrayed, but in a bigger metaverse, there will be assets, right? It will be property, items, and I think that's really important for people to truly own those aspects, because if it comes down to a metaverse where it's centralized and like you are told exactly what you can and can't do, then no one's going to want to use that.
Yeah, I would just say, I think when it comes to metaverse stuff, I think we're extremely early. Decentraland is browser-based. It crashes every 10 minutes and or maybe every minute. And I agree with Matt. The big metaverses, so-called, or I think Discord has been the biggest community or culture for me. I met so many awesome people just on Discord. More so than Decentraland. I was actually in Decentraland the other week, and I was trying to I went to the most popular place in Decentraland, and there was a bunch of people around. I was trying to talk to all of them, and no one would talk to me. So, so I think we're still really early in regards to like centralized versus decentralized. I do think the best company's positioned right now to make the long-term play in the metaverse is actually Epic Games. I think Epic Games is probably the best positioned company in my opinion. Because they have Unreal Engine and Fortnite, and so they have the users, they have the technology, and I think we're going to see a lot of cool stuff from them over the years.
I think, unfortunately, the best positioned company is Facebook, Meta, unfortunately. But Epic Games has an interesting play. I agree. I think that the term metaverse is being misused and doesn't really have a meaning in the way it's being thrown around right now because it's so flexible. I think its better word would be community, and that really all we're talking about is the reduction of the expense of forming, maintaining, and growing a community, right? And that's really what Coca-Cola did, in having a network for distributorship. That's what AT&T did. That's what the cable companies do, right? And now what's happened is that individuals can start to form communities, and those communities can have these abilities to onboard people and to get consensus and support intellectual transactions and physical and monetary transactions. And so, to me, metaverse has nothing to do with like AR or VR, or any of these technologies. And as long as we're using technology to describe things, it's not going to be relevant to the mass consumer, right? And so to me, a metaverse could be an app on your phone that forms a community that enables you to do things that could just be text-based, right? But enables you to understand what's happening with your baseball team, or be Discord is a metaverse, right? It's just a discrete community, a discrete boundary within which something can happen, which you would visit and participate in that environment because you know there's some homogeneity as to what's happening there, and that's why you'd visit it. So right now, I just invested in a company with Neil Stephenson who wrote Snow Crash. It's called Lamina One, and basically it's going to be a metaverse of metaverses. And we're going to take away all the technological requirements to start a metaverse, to start a community, and we're going to give you a dashboard. You're going to say, do you want it to be centralized or decentralized? Do you want KYC, yes or no? Do you want your own currency? Do you want avatars? Do you want stick figures, or do you want 8K? Right? All those are still metaverses, right? I've just basically gone across, it could be text-based. So I think that when you're listening to this thing about metaverses, everyone keeps thinking that the technology is driving humanity, but it's not. What's happening is that humanity has needs, and those needs actually don't change, but the centralized authorities and the environment around you and the politics start to divorce you from your ability to access those needs or to the solutions, or to, Dele would talk about your inalienable, digital rights, right? And so the technology is a tool, right? It's just an ability. So we've always wanted to associate. We've always wanted to trade. We've always wanted to feel part of the group or better than the group or whatever, right? And the technology is just another way to do it. And metaverses is just a loose way to say using technology to form a community where you can have some level of transactions.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I guess, in my way of thinking of it, that's a cool spectrum, right? Around different kinds of communities and distribution of information. For me, it's really more of like a 3D web, right? And it's like a new interface, for the web experience where, we can move in as avatars and experience, community and being with friends and other people in like a 3D environment. So that kind of is what I feel is metaverse, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the only thing. And so in that, if I think about it, if it's the same as Web 2, like Dele was saying, we don't own anything. We don't control anything. We don't control our avatars. There's no NFTs. The whole reason for this conference doesn't exist, right? Because we don't own, what we're going to wear. We're not going to own a house. We're not going to own land, etc. So that's a pretty bleak vision, right? We got this chance to transform everything. The reason that I think a lot of people are here at the conference, we've got Web3, it's like this new opportunity to remake the world. And if you're going to put a 3D interface on it, let's make it something cool that everybody can, get value out of. And so NFTs are going to have to be the start, right? There's going to have to be value from those that we own and our data and things like this. So those people will definitely understand, and it's going to be a different experience from being in Facebook. It looks like we're coming down to maybe having one last question for each person. So, so if we came back to this room in 5 years, what do you think is going to be the state of the metaverse, right? So we're talking about, like, what is the metaverse? What's it going to look like? James, you kind of gave this spectrum. Where do you think it's going to be in 5 years?
Well, interestingly, going back to what you were talking about, NFTs, I think that the word NFT is not going to exist. I think NFT, again, as long as we have to talk about NFTs, then it's not going to be mass adoption, right? NFT is describing a set of capabilities those capabilities will be attractive to people. People will use those assets that have those capabilities, but it won't be an NFT anymore. It'll be the way you own land, the way you buy sneakers, the way you buy art, the way you form community, the way you hold your money, the way you trade your money, the way you invest. And it's just going to be self-sovereign, with your own ability to use encrypted technology to have liquidity globally, and without being told how you're supposed to transact life. And so it won't be NFT, that will be life.
Cool. Matt?
Yeah, I think hopping off of what James said, NFT is almost like a new primitive of the internet. The same way when the web was started, everyone was probably talking about HTML and TCP, but no one says that anymore. It's just the internet. I do think, though, that Web3 is positioned in a certain way because of how composable it is, that people can build on top of each other, and it's much more open, that the speed of innovation is going to be even faster. Like even from this year to last year, there's so much more innovation, so many more tools, everything's so much better. So I think in 5 years, it could be really close to being a complete, it would be possible. I was just thinking when you were saying, like, what year will it be when NFT.NYC is fully digital, where we don't have to actually meet in person? And it's possible in 5 years we could be doing this digitally. It's very possible.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, real quick, because I know we got to run. I'm in these virtual worlds almost every day, and I actually think the tech plays a big part in it. So hopefully in 5 years, we could be at a place where we can run Fortnite in the browser. That's my hope.
Okay.
Dele? Yeah, tough one for me. I have a science fiction saga, Meta Knights, which is about the battle for the soul of the metaverse, and it's a science fiction story about the dystopic future that lies ahead and how we're trying to fight that. So when I ask that question, I find myself deep in the narrative. Quite frankly, I'm quite concerned. I think in some senses in 5 years' time, we could be at a point of, I think we'll be at a point of significant adoption of the metaverse. I think it will become the killer application of Internet 2. But whether that will put us in a worse place socially than we are today or in a better place, I don't know. And I think that really is dependent on what we do now.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I am seeing an enormous amount of innovation and creativity, especially coming out of the Web3 community. I have the hope that in 5 years, we're going to see a lot of different online worlds, and we'll be able to go to these different communities, that align with our values and our missions and our purpose, and be able to, if you want to go and you want everything to be like Web 2, yeah, you can go there, right? Just be like Facebook, etc. But if you really want to own everything and you want to hang out with people that want to make decisions about the way the community operates, there'll be that type of world as well. So I think in 5 years, there's going to be a lot of different worlds, a lot of different metaverses, and you'll be able to pick and choose, and maybe you spend some time in some centralized ones or some hybrid or others. So I think there'll still be a lot of choice. One quick thing that happened this morning was 30 of the largest tech companies did come together, and they've started an organization to create interoperability standards for the coming metaverse. So they're trying to get ahead of this in order to interoperate with each other. And so that, does indicate that centralization is going to be alive and well. But I think, our community can be large and strong, and do hope that we'll be talking about the decentralized metaverse in 5 years.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing. Did you want to?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
No. If you're ready to say something,
sounds like
go ahead, James. Why don't you take us off?
Sounds like the 30 largest tech companies are building the battle star.
Yeah.
So
The Death Star.
Let's give the panel a hand, everybody.